When most people think of Internal Revenue Service employees, they envision a no nonsense, grim type of individual. Carl Eichelman, however, was not your average tax man. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics. Don, tell me about Carl Eichelman. How did he get interested in the beast?
Well, Carl first became intrigued about the beast almost a year before the ride opened, in the summer of 1978, when he saw aerial construction footage of the beast on a Dayton TV station. It was Channel 2 in Dayton, and he began contacting Kings Island, asking questions, about the construction, looking for updates. Initially he was doing that about every 2 weeks, then multiple times in 1 week. And Ruth Voss, who was Kings Island's public relations manager at the time, she fielded most of his inquiries, and eventually she had to tell him, Carl, we can't tell you how many bolts, we put in it since yesterday. But his interest in the beast was noted by Ruth and others at the park, and he was extended an invitation to attend Media Day, which was on April 13th, 1979. He rode the coaster 6 times that day, all in the pouring rain. But he didn't care. He came off soaked after his first ride, and thought since he was soaked, he'd just keep riding. And there were several phones in the Beast station, for the media to call back to their stations. And so what he did after a couple of rides was he started calling people at the IRS, and he'd hold up the phone as the train was coming in, and just super excited. And he was saying, "Here it comes! Listen to the train! Listen to the train! You got to get out here and ride this." He bought a season pass. It was the first year 4 season passes at Kings Island in 1979. And, he went on to ride it 4,400 times from 1979 to 1985. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 77. But, Carl was the original beast tamer, and his travels on the beast took him over 6,100 miles. Ended up spending, if you do the calculations of 4,400 rides and, about 360 hours, or roughly 15 days of his life on a beast train. That doesn't account for how many hours of his life, how many days of his life went into waiting in line to ride it.
Mhm.
But he was just always, just super enthused about the beast. It was authentic, it was genuine. His passion and that for the ride, it was contagious. So other coaster enthusiasts that would ride with them, I mean, they were all, having the same kind of fun that he was. Yeah, I got to know Carl in 1981, and we became pretty good friends. Obviously, doing the same kind of thing he was doing over at the racer, and it was kind of a friendly competition, I guess you would say. But yeah, I mean, I miss Carl, having him around and talking coasters with him.
Yeah, I mean, always remember hearing the stories, and I think both of you were featured in that Beast 25th anniversary video that they played in the queue. For those of you who remember that, I
Hmm.
think it's on KI Central's YouTube channel. The park gave me a copy, and unless it's been pulled for a copyright strike of some sort, because it's been like 15 years now. But um, so yeah, when I met Carl, he wasn't actively riding anymore. I remember he was kind of just like chilling out on a bench, and this was on Diamondback's media day. Got to shake hands with them and have a very brief conversation. But he was always the type that garnered a posse, as they would say, as the kids would say in today's world.
Yes, he did. Like I said, just that personality that they had. Now they had a sign out front of the beast, and that's how I ended up meeting him. Was it said countdown to Carl Eckelman's 2000th ride? And I had already had over 500, whatever it was at the time, on the racer, but wasn't aware of what Carl was doing. So I stood outside the sign like hundreds would do every day, just to see who this guy was. And then I introduced myself to him, told him what I was doing on the racer, and his first response to me was, "Oh, you like the kiddie coasters, huh?"
Mm.
So it, he liked to get his little dig in like that. But he asked if I wanted to ride with him, and sure. But there were days, that I would be at Kings Island and riding with Carl, and you know, he would just talk to people in line, and people would recognize him in that, and then he would say, "Hey, come ride with us," and just sometimes by the end of the day, the group around us, and him when I wasn't with them, but the group around, would always kind of grow. There was one time in particular that the beast went down temporarily, so we decided with our group to go ride another ride. So we head over to the log flume, and you go through the queue, you get to the bottom of the steps, and the ride operator says, "How many's in your group?" Most people say two, four, five, whatever, and
Mhm.
Carl says 44. The girl says, "What?" And he's like, "We got 44." Well, we did have 44 people that, including ourselves, that were with us, but we knew none of these people before the day started. And it was like that all the time. So just, being around him and riding the beast with him and just people I met through that, I would say I probably, just it got into the thousands of people that I met just riding the beast with Carl, just because he would talk to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, quite the talker from what I understand. Now, we did an episode about how Ruth Voss was able to leverage your racer rides, and she obviously did this with Carl as well.
Hmm.
But I remember a very infamous thing that he said on Son of Beast Media Day. You might have told me the story about whether Son of Beast was the ultimate coaster.
Yeah, the train came back in the station, and you got to remember now, Carl really stopped riding after the 1985 season, and we'll get into why in a moment there. But
Mhm.
train comes back in, media goes up to him, "Hey, Carl, what'd you think of Son of Beast? Is it the ultimate roller coaster?" So he was asked, "Is it the ultimate roller coaster?" And Carl said, "No." He goes, "The ultimate roller coaster will be when train goes out, and then when it comes back in, all the riders are dead."
Well, the
He was
problem
just trying
was
to
that
have
they asked the wrong question in Carl's defense.
right, right. But he was just trying to, just trying to have a quick quote or something for them. But I remember, the people from Kings Island in the corporate office, they were like, "Did he just say what I thought he said?" And it was like, we can't have him talking to the media if he's going to say things like that. But no, he was a great quote. He was a natural in front of the camera. Uh, he just could rip off, ride stats, and nobody was a better salesperson for the Beast than Carl Eichelman, and that's a reason why Ruth Voss would schedule a lot of interviews with him, and it wasn't just the local news media; it was the morning national TV shows. It was People Magazine,
Mhm.
it was the National Enquirer, different things like that. So he was everywhere. They had People Magazine was a TV show, or People, was. TV show that was, all the different markets had that. PM Magazine actually was the name of the show, and uh, she would have Carl and I on those all the time. But in front of a camera, just a natural, real engaging personality. He was genuine and authentic, and I think when you talk about those two terms, you can fool people initially. That you're like that, but the more you're around them, people eventually figure you out if you're, if that's really you, and it was really him. I mean, there was never a day that he wasn't like that, just real enthusiastic, and it was all genuine. And that was one of the things I really loved seeing about him was what you see is what you got, and just his passion for not only the Beast but Kings Island and the industry as a whole. Now, he before the Beast, he would spend his summer vacations traveling around, so it wasn't just a Beast thing. He would travel around the country and use his vacation time riding different roller coasters. He had his schedule at IRS changed to work night shifts so he could ride the Beast in the morning. So he would get off work, go have breakfast somewhere, come to the park, and then he would ride from like 10 a.m. until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. If he was on a roll, he'd go a little further if he was able to get a lot of rides in. But back at that time, you're talking about on average, an hour wait time
Yeah, yeah.
for the Beast. And if he could 10 a day was considered, if he could get 10, that was a great day. But most days he'd get 6, 7, or 8, and then go back home, sleep for 4 hours, and then go to work, and then come back the next day to do it all over again.
And then you mentioned in 1985 he kind of ceased up a little bit. Why did he stop writing so much?
At the end of the season, now Carl always said from the time that I met him in 1981, and there were always rumblings about um, the Beast, the racer, would get the headrest, which they now have on the back of each seat.
Hmm.
When he first started, and when I first started riding the racer, it didn't have that. There was no headrest on the back. So he always said, if they ever put on in headrest, on the Beast, I'm going to, stop riding. Well, in 1986, the headrest were introduced on the coasters, and that was, that was pretty much the end of it for him. Now, I don't know whether he was, really, thinking that I'm going to stop after I get a certain number of rides. And I know he'd said at one time he wanted to get 10,000,
Mm.
finish with 4,400. But I don't know if that really played into it or something else played into it. Uh, but he stopped, at that point. Now, you got to remember back then there's not social media, there's not fan sites. So a lot of times, unless the park announced something, it was in the news, you didn't know.
Right.
So we were there for Media Day in 1986 in the spring for the refurbishment of Coney Mall. And the Zephyr was new, Skylab was new. They had refurbished the Dodge 'em, and they were test running the racer, sending out the test cycles. And we saw that it had the headrest. And Carl said, "Well, that's it. Looks like they've done headrest. I'm done." So I don't know if that was really, what triggered it or something else. But he at that point in time, he would have been close to 50,
Mhm.
and it was probably, they were going to change his shift at the IRS. He moved to Maysville, a little longer drive than when he lived across the street from Cincinnati's Coney Island, and just hopped right on 275 and, drove up to the park from there. So a little bit longer drive, about 90 minutes or so, to get to the park. So that probably contributed as well to just the distance he had to go, the shift in his work schedule. Those had to play in it as well.
Yeah. So you guys were you overlapped quite a bit because you started in '81, he started in '79. Was there ever like a friendly or not so friendly rivalry between you two?
Well, the park, the park's marketing department, specifically Ruth Voss, she definitely played up the friendly rivalry. There would be different stories at the start of each year that would be out in the news media, locally and then within the region, and just what our numbers were starting the year and how there was this competition between us, and who's going to finish the year with the most rides. So there was that. Now I don't know that. Carl enjoyed that part as much because when he started, he was really the first person, that was doing something like that. And then I, came in and was doing it. We were the only two then at that point doing it. I believe there was one other person maybe at Six Flags over Georgia. Her name was Betsy Abrams, but she wasn't riding the same coaster every single day. She was logging how much she rode, but it wasn't, 7 days a week like we were doing. But I was told, by some of the members of the management team at Kings Island, back in the '80s, that when Carl stopped, that they were like, "You stole his thunder, you passed him up." So he was no longer the king with the most number of rides on a roller coaster. Once you passed him up, his numbers weren't going to be as interesting to the media, because if he was going to get the 5,000th ride, well, that had already been done, by you, or you might already be at 6,000 by that time. And they said, at the pace you were going, you were definitely going to get to 10,000 first. And some thought that that might have played into it as well, but I don't know.
How many rides did he end up with when he stopped?
4,400.
4,400 on the nose.
4,400. Yeah, he took it to that number and then, kind of walked away.
When did he hit 4,400?
He hit 4,400 in 1989. He came back. There was a couple different times he would come, but not often. Maybe he'd come like once a month or something. But his 4,400th ride, he rode it. It was Ruth Voss's retirement party.
Really?
So he rode it, and after he got off one ride, he could keep riding. And I said, "You're not going to ride again?" He goes, "Nope, I'm at 4,400," and that was it.
Well, that's quite a story. All right. Well, rest in peace, Carl Eichelman. It's been what 38 years since he last visited Kings Island, like on a regular basis. Riding the beast. But time does not diminish the contribution that he's made to the park and to the industry. So, rest in peace, Carl. Thank you so much for what you've done.